The next big thing began in 1996, and it was a Healthway initiative. They put out for tender a whole bunch of really good contemporary music projects, initiatives that they wished to sponsor, and a band competition. I think they call it a Battle of the Bands at the time, was one of the projects. We applied for it and we were selected.
There are a lot of opportunities out there which we felt we were missing, and we didn't have the expertise to identify where the projects were, who to work with and who the key players were. So we called together about 15 people around a table, I think for about 6 months, and identified about 7 major projects that Healthway sponsored. And around about that time I think we then allocated about $200,000 a year, which was a significant amount in that time, and $50,000 was earmarked towards a statewide Battle of the Bands, which became known, of course, as the next big thing.
There was a couple of things I wanted to achieve. One was to actually, promote the non-smoking message to all these young people who are into rock and roll, but also get out to the regional areas. And they felt that, building an awareness of the Healthway message, as well as encouraging original music out in country towns, would be a really good thing. Perth Theatre Trust were very interested in sort of expanding into the youth area and also encouraging Perth arts by encouraging a lot of songwriting to go on, and they figured that a band competition would be a great thing to do that. And Vicky Caulfield was approached. She was a great events manager, and she approached me and asked if I'd be interested in help setting it all up. So that was back in February 96, and the very first band comp ran in the second half of 1996.
It was just a great thing to do. It was a terrific idea to run a statewide Battle of the Bands that was open to anybody, or Battle of the Musicians that was open to anybody all over Western Australia. So it was always a challenge from the beginning, and I guess the first couple of years we never really expected it would continue for 10, 11 years. We never thought of that, but here it is.
Despite the challenges facing the next big thing as a statewide non-smoking competition in 1996, it soon made its mark in the original music scene.
Well, I have to say it wasn't always easy. In the very early days we were told that smoke-free policies in licensed premises would never work, and there was continuing difficulties, particularly in regional venues, until quite recently, I suppose the last 5 years or so. But little by little we introduced the program by putting smoke-free areas in, and then totally smoke-free areas whenever one of our performances or our sponsored projects were taking place.
It was the first music event of its type to actually expand from out, well, basically base itself in Perth, but expand out to as far north as Derby, down to Esperance, and everywhere in between. And so with those country towns being so focused on cover music, it was really a challenge to find original bands. The thing that was great though was when a lot of these cover musicians decided, well, I've got a couple of tunes, so maybe we'll put a 20-minute set together and have a go at this competition. Some of the early highlights were like in Karratha, they decided to make a big event of it. They ran the gig at their local swimming pool, and they had something like about 800 people turn up to the gig, and it was purely an original music night. So to have something like that in a town that doesn't really do much in the way of original music was awesome.
We're always trying to get outside the metropolitan area and spread our message statewide, and that's one of the reasons why the next big thing, or the NBT, was such a great project to get on board with. But it has allowed us to reach young emerging musicians from throughout the state. And I must say that once we introduced the program and sponsored it for $50,000 a year, it was very pleasing to see that the first winner was Kerry Ann Cox from Derby, and that showed us that we were really getting to the right target group, a young Indigenous person from a rural and remote community.
The first next big thing winner, a statewide winner, was Kerry Ann Cox from the Kimberley, and she went on to win a whole bunch of Deadly Awards and all sorts of prizes. She won Whammies, she's travelled overseas, she's recorded 3 or 4 CDs, and she's still going strong. And of course, we had 1998. We had our winner was John Butler, another solo performer, and he was from Pinjarra originally. So the regional acts, sometimes we're really surprised at what comes out.
First, I remember the pub that now isn't got torn down, is now an old age home that can't sell all the units, which is a real shame for the local music scene to see venues like that shut everywhere. But what I remember, that was right when I started getting quite a lot of gigs at pubs and was playing solo, and I think I played maybe three songs for them, like 3 10-minute songs, and it was great. I mean, James Hugo was in the judging panel at the time, and I didn't know him, but I knew of him because he recorded One Joe, and he's a great engineer and producer, and I was quite in awe of him, and still have a lot of respect for him. So, and I remember Prawns with Horns being in the Heat, and they're really good friends of ours and a great band.
My first involvement with the Next Big Thing was as a member of a band, Prawns with Horns. We came second in the Next Big Thing the year John Butler won, which I can't remember what year it was, probably 97 or 98. We called ourselves the Next Best Thing for quite some time, and of course it was rigged.
John Butler did the opening spot, so he played at 8:30. There was hardly anyone there. And at 8:30, opening spot's a hard gig, 20 minutes. All the judges were just mesmerised. The small crowd that had gathered, like from when he started through to when he finished, were just mesmerised.
From what I remember, I was at the back of the Swanbourne with the Prawns with Horns guys. I think they came second. And it was like, well, either I'm out or I'm extremely in, and you kind of just have to kind of hold it at that, you know. Definitely not going to be buying rounds too early or walking out crying or something like that. I just kind of have to wait and see, I guess. I don't remember thinking I'd won or thinking I'd lost, but just going, it's a very strong possibility that it could be either.
I could tell when I saw him at the Heat, I thought this guy's going to win the whole thing because he just had that charisma.
I do recall the night very well, Swanbourne Hotel. I remember the judges received free cool drinks, which was great. And I remember John being up against Prawns with Horns, and the other bands escaping at the moment, but there wasn't the trio, and it was John solo. And he, you know, when you're solo going up against, you know, 4 to 6 piece bands or whatever, you're obviously going to make an impact, and he made the kind of impact then that he kind of does constantly now. You know, that's something special, and that kind of bore through to all the judges on the night. And you know, it's full credit to him in being able to win a prize like that and use it as a stepping stone. You know, not everyone has the good fortune or, you know, perhaps the longer term ability to make that work for them, but he's certainly someone who has. So yeah, I feel pretty privileged to have been at that.
Well, we played with John a lot around Fremantle, in at Mojo's and Seaview. We had him down at Margaret River on tour once or twice along the way, you know, as our support act. And the thing that always struck us was that John would play, and he'd sit at the door doing a roaring trade, selling cassettes, which was what he had at the time when he was still a solo act. We'd struggle to sell albums off the door. So, I mean, even then I just remember sort of going, well, you know, there's something about this that people really want to take home with them, which was really interesting.
I just remember going, wow, there's a few people out there who actually see something in what I do. It just like that first time when I was busking, and that instant recognition that I got, people wanting tapes and donating so much money. I instantly, wow, it's striking a chord. I'm resonating with people, and of course when I won the Next Big Thing, it was the same way. It was like, wow, there's this industry crew, there's these recorders, there's these journalists, there's these musicians, and then there's this crowd as well who are all really getting into it, and you kind of go, it gives you, it definitely is an inspiration to keep on going, you know, an incentive and a great feeling when people really, you know, appreciate what you do. I always say appreciation is extremely appreciated.
You know, that also took the competition up a level as well, because with band competitions like the Campus Band Comp, for example, which is the other big band competition here in WA and also around Australia, those band competitions, they focus on bands. Whereas the Next Big Thing, well, in '98 there was John Butler as a soloist, And in '96 it was Kerry Ann Cox, an Indigenous singer-songwriter, acoustic performer from Broome, who won the whole thing. So it really allowed the Next Big Thing to create its own image in the I suppose the world of band competitions, to show that, well, look, it doesn't matter if you're a band or a solo artist, come one, come all.
As well as winners Kerry Ann Cox and John Butler, the Next Big Thing's early years saw the likes of 1997's winner 3PH and finalists Steve Tallis, the Tigers and Wide Open Spaces, who are now known as Halogen. In 1999, Fourth Floor Collapse took out the title against a strong field including Gyroscope and Proton. Pop trio Klipspringer were named the Next Big Thing in 2000 against a strong and varied field including acts such as B-Movie Heroes, Longbow Tom and Mr. Sandman.
Other highlights, I suppose Fourth Floor Collapse, because they had 2 shots at it. They came around in 98, and in 98 they got beaten by John Butler, and then they came around again in 99 and they won it. So that was great for them, the fact that they had 2 shots at it. I've spoken to a lot of bands these days who just have 1 go at it and that's it, and I'd explain to them the Fourth Floor Collapse story, and doesn't seem to make much difference, but it's that's another highlight, the fact that they had 2 shots at it, and they went on to have a really solid future here in Perth, and they've relocated over east now, and they've released plenty of records and had a lot of radio airplay and that sort of thing.
My involvement with the Next Big Thing competition started pretty early, probably around 1997, 98, not long after the competition had first started. I was playing in my first real band back then, and we had entered into the competition, and for 2 years running, we received the good old knockback letter. Sorry, you're not in the top 49. Good luck. Thanks for your application. Please try again next year. So yes, that's always very disappointing, and probably a good way to look back and value the things that I have sort of received in the past few years from the Next Big Thing, which went on to in 2000 I was managing some bands, a couple of bands called Longbow Tom and another called B-Movie Heroes, which I co-managed. They were both in the Next Big Thing 2000 final, and one of those bands got second place by 1 point. So certainly being very close with the band as their manager, it was quite a big disappointment to lose by 1 point, but also quite an achievement to come second to a great band like Klipspringer.
In the semi-finals, we were actually up against some pretty decent bands, and when I say decent, I mean good. And we came off stage, and I was just thinking after the semi-final, nah, we don't have a chance. And when we actually got through, I was pretty amazed. And then I think the final, actually, we were a bit more confident. It was really just that semi-final where we were going, oh no. Actually, I do remember the first heat now, because we were up against a few big bands at that time as well, and we played at the Heidi, just on the floor in the front room there, and that was pretty exciting. I think we just kind of had adrenaline rushes, and that suited what we were doing. So, yeah, we got through. It was a big deal, like bands who'd come through previously had, gone on to kind of achieve a decent level of notoriety around, and some of them went on to even, grander things after that. But just knowing that we had the resources to actually go on and do things that we'd wanted to do but couldn't actually afford to, it was just like they'd given us the little step up basically, or big step up I guess even,
A change in competition timing led to no Next Big Thing in 2001. 2002 saw the competition return, and the depth and breadth of the maturing West Australian music scene was never more evident than in the lineup and finalists. That year saw Josephat crowned the Next Big Thing. while in 2003, Snowman showed the talent that would see them become one of the emerging stars of the Australian music scene when they won that year's final.
You're hoping for a second or a third because you don't really think that you're going to win, and then when they do read out third place and then second place, you start to wonder, well, kind of 25% we're going to win it, 75% we're going to lose, oh, come on, and you're just hoping for that one chance. And I guess once you have your name read out, it's just like you start to, I guess, try to start to comprehend what you've actually won, because it is such a massive kick for a young band to win the next big thing. It's hard to get noticed in Perth. There are a lot of bands, and there's certain people that you need to impress, and I feel each year, unless you've been around for 2, 3, 4 years and really doing the hard yards on the scene, people will start to notice you after then. The people that you want to notice you, who can further you, in WA once you get to a certain stage. But winning the next big thing pretty much gives you that opportunity to be put in front of those people.
It has been very successful in helping to launch new bands and new musicians, new music to Australia and to the world. I'd like to think that we have been very influential in helping a lot of careers. John Butler, of course, he's the biggest name. We've got Kerry-Ann Cox from the Kimberley, who's an amazing Aboriginal singer-songwriter. Snowman, just in the last few years, have gone on to national success. Fourth Floor Collapse have been, I can go on actually, there's so many of them. I like to think that we have been able to help that along a little bit.
It gives myself personally some satisfaction to know that I've assisted the careers of young, very talented Western Australians. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was so supportive of Healthway supporting the next big thing in the very early days. And I think, history's proven that decision to be quite right, but Healthway's not the only player, of course, in the scene. We rely on partnerships, and the partnership with the next big thing, organisations like RTR, Express Magazine and WAM are just so important in how we can effectively reach those certain communities and industries.
Publicly, it was really great too, because of the amount of attention that it created in the local press, especially the Express and things like that, and also in the local music scene. That when you did win or even came second or third, or those people were just took a bit of a notice. Your name was mentioned a bit more, and any bit of exposure helps.
At the time, I think I'd just started working as well, and to be able to, show up to work one day and go, oh, we've won this band competition, it's called The Next Big Thing. People are kind of a little bit taken aback by that. It's like, oh, the next big thing? Well, that sounds very impressive.
And then also, every other band in Perth wants to play with you because you've won the next big thing, and, all of these other opportunities start to open up with, obviously, airplay, and particularly on our friendly Perth station, RTR FM.
It's good to see bands like, Snowman, for example, going on and doing really wonderful things, because it really does lift the level of the next big thing name. They carry it with them. And I also like to think that the next big thing name is quite an important thing. It's quite an important part of the environment for the WA music scene now, because it does unearth bands, it does discover bands, it does encourage bands to pick up a guitar and write some tunes as opposed to just playing covers. It's always been one of those things that I've seen as a catalyst for creativity in Western Australia, and so that's been a highlight for me to see the West Australian music industry embrace the next big thing, or just regard it as something a little bit more serious than what it started out as just another band comp. And I really do feel that it does have the opportunity, or it does have the ability to discover new talent.
Okay, this is it. The winner of the next big thing, 2005, is The Fault. And there's only one left.
my role starts as soon as the entry forms come through. I have to take those entry forms, process them, put them in a database. I then have to make sure the heats are all booked, semi-finals, finals, put the bands that have successfully gone through the tape judging into the heats, and all the worksheets, all that sort of stuff that comes with, you know, venue bookings.
My primary involvement has been as MC of the Next Big Thing last year, possibly another one, who knows, still to be determined. But I had a great time doing it. Up on stage, all the different heats leading up to the semis and then the final, introducing the bands, keeping things moving. Some might say I cracked a gag now and again. Who knows?
My involvement with the Next Big Thing primarily was writing Peter's gags. Secondarily was being a judge, and I've been a judge on and off for years. And I suppose I liked actually watching the Next Big Thing because it was a good indication of what music was coming up in Perth.
I normally pick some key industry people to tape judge the event or to tape judge those entries, and it normally takes about 6 to 7 hours, so it's not just a let's have a quick listen, pick 49 and out the door kind of thing. It's definitely taken very seriously. Any of the people that are involved in the process can, if one of their bands that they think should go through has missed out, we certainly discuss why they've missed out and whether they should go through. And the process of going through the sort of 200 entries is not hard. It's the end result where we've got a short list and then some, and then it's the then some that kind of get, you know, some of those people like those bands and really want them to, you know, to go through, and we have the problem of how we're going to adjust the 49 accordingly to make everyone around the table happy. So, because everyone's quite passionate.
If they don't get in, then the normal reaction is not to be happy about it. And I guess the normal reaction is to look at those that do come through and to say, well, we're better than them. You know, and I know from playing in bands that you tend to feel like, apart from some exceptions in my case, you do tend to feel like your band is the best band in the world.
Most judges, I think, a part of them sees what might go for the longer term. And, you know, the next big thing is, you know, all about taking someone to another level, taking them to the next level. And, you know, it's a great platform. You know, finding someone or a band or an outfit or whoever who can use that as a platform is the key to, you know, judging it, I guess, properly or correctly.
I think the judging's fantastic, especially in the finals. I also think that there's no way in the world that it could possibly be rigged.
Because I judge the finals every year, I actually make a point of not going to any of the heats or any of the semi-finals because I really just want to come to it with as fresh a set of eyes and ears as I can.
In all seriousness, I was last year at the final Next Big Thing in the toilets, and somebody was complaining about the judges. I said that I was a judge, and they said, well, it's all rigged anyway. And I said, it can't possibly be rigged because if there was one judge who gave a band 0 or gave them 100, their score would be taken out of the equation because the top score is taken out and the bottom score is taken out, so no one can possibly rig it. It's as fair as it can be.
Exactly. Well,
it's a competition after all.
Competition. Do you really seriously think that the Next Big Thing organisers get together the judges and form this small posse of deceit?
I don't find it surprising because I've been through that myself, not with the Next Big Thing, but with other band comps when I was younger, and you know, have been through the whole thing of you know, that judge has rigged it and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't surprise me because it's a very emotive thing, and musicians are very, very close to their music and they're very, very passionate about their own band. So in some ways it would be a little bit of a worry if bands did just always take it on the chin and didn't have a big dummy spit and run around complaining about everything, because let's face it, that's part of the fun of band competitions.
My role is actually to organise the regional heats. I need to appoint a coordinator in each region to be able to set up the heat and make sure that the heat runs smoothly, and then I try to go to some of the heats, but if I can't make it, someone else from the Next Big Thing committee will actually try and be there. And if not, we just have to appoint the regional coordinator to be in charge of the whole heat and the whole organisation.
The regional aspect of it, it's been fascinating. It's one of the things that I really like about it. But it's also something that we've struggled to maintain, and it has expanded and grown. We have always employed local coordinators to run the Next Big Thing out in the region. So there's 6, 7, 8 different regional centres that we've operated in, and we have local people running the thing. So they take ownership of it.
A lot of the time we're actually talking over the phone and via email, and it's not like face to face, and that can be quite challenging. But we try our best. We try and give them support over the phone and via email, and even sometimes through WAM we are trying to get like a kind of like relationship happening to actually provide support to regional coordinators out there.
Quite often it is one of the only opportunities for original bands to show their works. For example, and I have been to a Karratha heat, which I think there was something like 500 or 600 people at a Karratha heat, which is pretty impressive when you consider how many people attend heats in the metropolitan area, and even the numbers in the semis and the finals. It's quite up there numbers wise. For those acts, which is held in Karratha, and bands come from Newman, which is 500-600 k's away, Port Hedland and Roeburn and Tom Price. There's bands from all over the Pilbara region. It's quite often their only opportunity to play an original gig that year. So you quite often find that bands will form 3 or 4 months before the Next Big Thing, write a couple of original songs. If they don't win, they'll break up, and it's like a new process again. And that's a bit of a problem of just lack of opportunity.
What happens in the region sometimes is the bands start asking it in about January each year. When's it happening? When can we get involved? So there's not that much for musicians out in regional areas. So the Next Big Thing provides a really great avenue for them to explore their musical interests and to profile themselves to the rest of the state.
For the years that I was on the committee, the number of bands in the southwest were increasing to the point where we added in another Next Big Thing heat in Bunbury, and there was one in Margaret River, and still in Bunbury we had to cull bands. We had 14 acts apply. So certainly it's grown a lot, I think, in the southwest.
The development of the regional network has been something that I've always liked to see grow, and even in my management these days, and working with the record label and managing bands, I like to encourage them to go out to the regional areas to show that this is what you can do. You can get onto radio, that sort of thing, and you can tour and show a lot of the younger people that, and try and inspire them a little bit to actually write their own tunes. It's also been aided by things like Triple J, for example, like with the network coverage that Triple J does these days. Also with WAM having a regional officer there. All these sorts of things have really just kind of helped develop the regional network. So.
And we look forward to seeing you all down for Next Big Thing 2006 next year. And look out for the 2005 CD.
From the beginning, we were very careful that this is a competition about the musicians, the bands, the soloists. It was designed as a vehicle for them to record their music, to perform, to get experience, to network, to be profiled. So there was a range of different elements that we tried to incorporate into the experience. Just the experience of performing in venues with a real audience was really a great thing for some of them, particularly in the particularly out in the regions, but also to have the opportunity to go into a studio, professional studio, and to record a song that would then be on a CD and exposed to the world was at that time actually quite new.
I then moved into CD coordination. So, and that's really just organising all the text that goes onto the CD, the track listing, organising that the bands are recording, that they're teamed up with relevant or suitable producers, that they're working well together, that they're actually working, because we really need them to tie up things before deadlines. And as long as all those things are going across really well, then we have a CD.
It's the only band competition that they have where each of the heat winners win something really substantial. I mean, they win a day's recording time to get a song for the compilation CD. Then the compilation CD gets pressed and it gets distributed right around Australia. I think the last one was on the front of Groove magazine. So that's kind of a highlight, really. But before that, it was sent out to radio stations, music press, that sort of thing. So that's been a real cornerstone of the competition, actually having a CD. And then to have the winner also win an extra 3 days recording time, plus 500 CDs pressed and all that sort of thing, was just another bonus. So out of this one band comp, we get 2 CDs.
For those who've gone along and see them on the night, if they didn't win, they've got a chance later on to kind of see what those strengths were if they weren't maybe just not delivered on that particular night. The strength of that CD also is for, and who it goes to in the industry, is that, for one thing, not everyone can make every heat or final or whatever if they missed it. There's been years when I haven't been able to, but that CD is a good filler in or a good portrayal of who made it through in a particular year. And for those from the industry who received the CD and they were there, it's a good kick-on reminder of not only who won it, but who was also there and performed and were winners in their own way.
The producers thing, I mean, that's amazing. The fact that each of the bands now get their own producer, that's just fantastic. I mean, that's something we would never have considered back in the day. But nowadays, I suppose there's budget to do that.
We actually know the producers that we actually are hiring that year, so we try and match them up with the right bands.
That's
and we actually do have meetings just about that, just to try and match them up so they can actually bring out the best of the band. So it's not an easy job.
But we really want the CD to be the best that it can be. And the reason that we brought in some funding to allow the bands to work with producers is so that we could get a much more credible CD and build that in terms of like getting it out to radio, and instead of having the radios pick it up and go, I'm putting it down, we want them to pick it up and go, well,